Hi, I'm Glenn Rogers, and this is Biblical Insights. The title of our video today is Jesus Ministry Part 4. We're still pretty near the beginning of our series on Jesus Ministry, and what we're doing is going to be going through the book of Mark and letting Mark share with us the story of Jesus' life and ministry. Today, the text we're going to look at is from Mark chapter 1, verses 16 through 20. And as always, we'll be reading from the Simplified New Testament, which is my own translation. And this text is about Jesus calling his disciples, the men who would become his apostles. It says, one day, as Jesus walked beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Peter and Andrew throwing their nets into the sea. "Follow me," Jesus said to them, "and from now on you will fish for the souls of lost people." Without delay, the brothers followed Jesus, leaving their nets behind. A little further down the beach, Jesus saw James and John, the sons of Zebedee. They were out in one of their boats preparing their nets, for they were also fishermen. Jesus called them as he had Peter and Andrew, and without delay, they left their father and his hired men in the boat and followed Jesus. It's a very simple text, but it gives us some insights that are important in a couple of different ways. And so let's think about what Jesus has done here. Now, if you were just reading this account, and that's all, in other words, if there was only one gospel and it was Mark's, we didn't have Matthew and Luke and John to read and compare, you might think that Jesus has never seen these guys before, or that these guys have never seen Jesus before. He's walking by the sea and he says, "Hey, you, come here, follow me, be my disciple." Okay? But we know from the Gospel of John that that's not the case. That when John began his ministry, it was such an amazing thing. People from all over Israel came to hear him speak, including people coming from Galilee down to the Jordan River, not far outside of Jerusalem, to hear him. And among those who did were the fellows that Jesus eventually called as his apostles. And what you should probably do is read the first chapter of John's Gospel, and maybe the second, just to get the whole context there. And you will see that Jesus knew these guys ahead of time. He was already familiar with them. He had talked with them. They met him. They'd spent some time with him, right? So he now has gone. I mean, they left the area and went back up to Galilee, which was where their businesses were. They were fishermen. So they went back home, went back to work, right? And then Jesus left the area and went on up to Galilee to begin the part of his ministry that would take place up there in the north. And so while he's out one day walking along the sea where these guys work, and that may have been intentional on the part of Jesus. He may have known that they would be there, because where else would they be? They were fishermen, and so they would be by the sea. And Jesus was there, perhaps intentionally, to find them and to invite them to be his followers. Now, the conversation, as Mark records it, is very, very simple. Jesus sees them and says, "Follow me." And they just go. Okay, it's unlikely that was the whole of the conversation. Okay, that's not the way human beings talk, right? You don't just see someone and go, "Follow me," and they don't even say, "Okay, where are you going? For how long will we be gone?" We got, people don't just up and walk away and do something like that without having a conversation. And so they probably had a conversation. But, excuse me, Mark doesn't give us the whole conversation. Neither does Matthew, and John comes the closest. So you should go back and read that. But Jesus' essential message to them was, follow me. And so they did. And notice that it says they followed him without delay. They didn't say, excuse me, I apologize. I've had a cold and I've still got a cough, and I'm sorry for coughing in your face that way. They didn't make excuses. They didn't say, well, gee, we got a business to run and we can't leave, or maybe at the end of the day, do we have to do it right now? I mean, because we're trying to, They didn't make excuses. They were invited to become full-time disciples of Jesus, and they did. And they made their decision. And they didn't dilly-dally and say, well, we need to think about it, and we need to, without delay. They followed him. That's important. That's important that they did that, and that's an important lesson for us. So we got two things here to think about. Number one is following Jesus. Most people will follow somebody in their lives. Ultimately, and a lot of people don't like to hear this, but ultimately, there's only two people for you to follow. You're either going to follow Jesus or you're going to follow Satan. You see, and some people say, no, I don't follow either one of them. I do my own thing. Well, if you do your own thing, you're following Satan. You see, and that's one of the things that Satan does. He says, well, you should do what you want to do, not what somebody else wants you to do. Go, you live your life as you want. But see, that's exactly what he wants you to do. So he's lying to you. He's manipulating you. He's using you. He's telling you, you don't follow anybody. You go your own way. But the way you end up going is exactly the way he wanted you to go. So you're following him. See, there's only two options. You follow Jesus or you follow Satan. Now, under those two umbrellas of following Jesus and following Satan, you might make other choices and be interested in other things and go down this path or go down that path, and that's all fine. Those are just the details of life. But from a big picture point of view, there's only two options. You're either following God or you're following Satan. Who are you going to follow? Jesus found these guys and he says, follow me. And they said, okay. When you hear an invitation from Jesus to follow him, what are you going to do? You should follow him. And you should do it without delay. Why does it have to be without delay? Why does it have to be so urgent? Because as soon as you begin thinking about following Jesus, Satan is going to get in there and try to talk you out of it. And the longer you delay, the more chance you give Satan to talk you out of it, to put something in front of you, a roadblock of some kind, raising questions or issues or concerns or creating problems that get in the way so you can't go follow Jesus. See, he doesn't want you to follow Jesus. That's the last thing he wants you to do. And he will do anything to keep you from doing it. And so when you have an opportunity to follow Jesus, do it. And do it then. Don't wait. Don't delay. Don't put it off. Because then you open the door for Satan to come in and put all kinds of obstacles in your way and talk you out of it. Well, don't let him do that. Follow Jesus and follow him without delay. Well, what did Jesus have in mind for these guys? Jesus said, follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men. You will fish for the souls of lost people. Well, why would Jesus put it in those terms? Well, he was just speaking metaphorically. The guys he was talking to were fishermen. And so they were fishing for fish. Jesus said, hey, come follow me, and I'll teach you how to fish for people. We'll catch people will bring them in, will save souls, will change lives. You see, that's what Jesus was talking about. Well, which is more important? Fish or people? Well, obviously, people are more important. You need food to eat, and fish is pretty good, so you need the fish to have food to eat. And if you don't eat it yourself, then you sell it in the market, and then other people buy it, and they have food to eat. Nothing wrong with fishing for fish. It's an old, established, method of earning a living. It's a good thing to do. Nothing wrong with being a fisherman. But Jesus is saying, but reaching out to people and bringing people into a relationship with God, that's more important than catching fish. Other people can provide food. What I want you to do, Peter and James and John and all these guys, what I want you to do is to help me in my ministry of reaching out to lost people and bringing them back into a relationship with God. See, that's what he was talking about. So Jesus is in the early stages of his ministry. He is getting things started. He knows he's going to need some people to help him. But more important than that, he's going to need some people to train and prepare them to be leaders of the church he's going to establish, because he knows that he won't be there forever. He knows he's going to be crucified. He knows he's going to die. He knows he's going to return to heaven to be with the Father. And he needs some people who he has trained and who are ready to take over the leadership of the church. And so he calls these men into his service. He says, follow me. And he spends 3 years training those guys. And they're the ones who become his apostles. Now, he doesn't designate them his apostles right away, and we'll read about that later, okay? And so we'll have some things to say about what it is to be an apostle and what it means and whether or not there are apostles today and all that sort of thing. But for now, what we see is that Jesus, in the early stages of his ministry, are calling some very special people to be close to him, to be with him, to be his followers, to be his disciples, so that he can teach them and train them so that they can become the leaders of the church after he is gone. But this is in the early stages, and they don't have a clue what all of this is about. They just have heard Jesus. They know who he is. John said he's the Lamb of the world, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And so when he invites them to come along and be part of his ministry, that's what they want to go do. Now, it's also interesting to note that Jesus selected just ordinary people, fishermen. He could have gone into one of the important schools for rabbis and talked to some of the people there and selected some important and promising young rabbis who would knew the scriptures quite well and who could be leaders, and they were already teachers. He could have gone into royal families and said, hey, let's do this. I want you to be a part of this. He could have gone to rich people. He could have gone to a whole bunch of different people that you would think would be higher up on the list of people to put into an important position. But he didn't do that. He just went to normal, everyday, working class guys. Fishermen. It was a good job. It was a respectable job. But they were just fishermen. That's all. They didn't have a lot of status. They weren't wealthy. They were just working class guys. And those are the ones that Jesus selected to be the men who would help him establish the movement that literally changed the world. You don't have to be special before Jesus calls you into his service and before Jesus uses you to do something important. You don't have to be special. When Jesus calls you, and trains you and gives you the job and you do it, then you become sort of special, don't you? You're working with the Lord, and He's given you a job, and that, people will then look at you and go, wow, he got a really good job, didn't he? The Lord chose him. That makes you kind of special. But you don't have to be special to begin with. You just have to have faith. You just have to be willing. You have to be somebody that Jesus looks at and says, I can use him. Or I can use her. Come follow me, and we'll do good things together. That's what Jesus was saying. And so they followed. And look what amazing things they have done. The world is a better place because of Jesus and because of the people that he chose to be his disciples. And the call is still out there today. He's still calling people and saying, follow me. He's not selecting any more apostles. He's not training any more apostles. But he's still looking for people to follow him. Will you follow him? Are you already following him? Maybe you are. If you are, that's great. I'm happy. Ask him for more wisdom and more faith and more knowledge and more insight so you can do an even better job of serving him. So, as you think about these things for the next few days until you watch another of our videos, read your Bible, pray, go to church, and may God bless.